Her flight landed at 3:42 p.m. By 3:51, the key no longer worked. By 4:08, the movers were already on their second trip. And by the time she checked her voicemail at 4:15, my message had already been deleted by me. That's not where it started. That's where I decided it ended. The real beginning? Maybe it was the night before she left, when I found her passport wedged under the bathroom sink wrapped in a napkin. A napkin that smelled like men's cologne and still had a hotel logo printed across it in faded gold foil. Not the name of the hotel she claimed she'd booked. Not even the right country. I didn't confront her. I ironed her travel pants instead. I don't know what kind of man that makes me. Weak, probably. She always said I processed things too slowly, like I was some outdated printer trying to keep up with her airdrop lifestyle. That morning, I drove her to the airport. She didn't even ask me to. She acted surprised I offered, but got in the car anyway, typing something furiously on her phone the entire time. I wanted to ask if it was him, but I knew. Of course I knew. At Terminal 1, she didn't unbuckle her seatbelt right away. She just looked out the window and muttered, "We'll talk when I get back." Those were the last words she said to me. No goodbye, no kiss, just that line, as if she was pressing pause on a conversation she never planned to resume. And that's when I knew. This wasn't a break. It was an exit. Only she thought it would be hers. So I made a list. Not out of rage. Not out of revenge. Out of tiredness. Exhaustion, really. You don't blow up a life like this unless you're done begging someone to stay in it. And by the time her plane touched down, everything she thought she still had, me, the apartment, her spare key, the storage unit I paid for, even the damn Wi-Fi login, was already gone or changed or sold. She wanted to talk? Well, now she had plenty to talk about. But no one left to talk to. She always underestimated how much I notice. Not just the big things, like the sudden business trips that didn't show up on our shared calendar, or the way her phone screen always landed face down when I walked into the room. No, I'm talking about the tiny details most people ignore, like the fact that she started folding her socks differently, or that she swapped her usual citrus perfume for something sharper, something men typically pick out for women. I'm talking about the quiet pauses after she said, "I love you," like she was waiting for guilt to echo back. So when she left for this trip, I didn't fall apart. I activated a plan I'd written in my head a dozen times, one I never thought I'd use. I started with the apartment. We were renting it under my name. She always liked to joke that it made her feel dangerously dependent, which I now realize was code for temporary. I gave notice. Fast. No explanation. Just 30 days. Goodbye security deposit. Pack what matters. Then I hit the storage unit. The one I paid for. The one she filled with seasonal clothes and creative projects she never had time to finish. Half of it was junk. The other half, let's just say it was filled with too many memories she clearly didn't value anymore. I donated most of it. Kept a few things she might ask about, just to see how she reacts when I say, "Oh, that's gone." But the real chess move was her laptop. I hadn't planned to touch it. I swear I hadn't. But when I went to unplug the router, her MacBook was sitting open on the desk. And like some sick cosmic invitation, it wasn't locked. Just humming there, screen glowing, email wide open. I didn't snoop. I downloaded every email, every attachment, every photo backup from her cloud that was still linked. Amateur mistake. Dozens of gigabytes of confirmation that my instincts had been screaming the truth for months. He was real. His name was Keaton. What kind of name is that? He wasn't just someone from the conference. He wasn't just texting to check in. He was booking hotels under both their names. He was making dinner reservations at places I'd begged her to try for years. He was calling her Riri, a nickname I didn't even recognize. There were voice notes, laughter, conversations where they mocked me, called me docile, said I probably still believed in karma. I didn't get angry. Not right away. I just sat there, listening to her giggle at some joke he made about my toddler-level cooking, and something inside me detached, like someone had finally pulled the last Jenga block out of my spine. So I wiped the laptop, reset everything, packed it neatly into the original box she kept under the bed. Of course she did. And left a sticky note on top with just one word: enjoy. Then I sold the bed. Yes, the bed. The one we picked out together. The one I built with those stupid tiny Allen wrenches while she sat on the floor drinking kombucha and scrolling Pinterest. Gone. By the time she landed, it was listed, picked up, and paid for in cash. I even tossed in the decorative pillows she claimed were just for aesthetics. I figured, what better way to start her new life than sleeping on the floor of her old one? And that was only day 2. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a minute. Not because of the rage. That came later. That night, it was something stranger. Something colder. I felt, still, like the air had stopped moving. Like I was watching my life from the outside and couldn't quite remember how to climb back in. I walked around the empty apartment with a roll of painter's tape and started marking everything I would no longer allow to exist. The mug she bought in Prague? Marked. The glass vase from that weird art fair in Asheville? Gone. The watercolor painting she made of us for our 2nd anniversary. The one she insisted on hanging by the door so it would be the first thing we see when we come home. I burned it. In the kitchen sink. One corner at a time. You'd think I would cry. I didn't. I hummed. At around 5:30 a.m., I remembered the spare key she kept taped under the 3rd drawer in her desk. I removed it, tossed it in the trash, then fished it out 5 minutes later and snapped it in half with a pair of pliers. It felt satisfying, like proof that I could break something she thought was permanent. Then I packed a suitcase. Not for me. For her. Just 10 items. Not essentials. Not clothes. 10 things she couldn't easily explain to anyone else. A framed photo of us with a date that didn't match the trip she claimed she was on. A dried flower she told me she got from a stranger in Vienna, except I found the receipt for it in a boutique 3 blocks from Keaton's apartment. An old t-shirt of mine she once asked to keep because it smelled like home. And 7 other things I won't list here, not because I'm hiding them, but because if I say them out loud, they'll lose the power they had in that moment. She'll know what they meant. She'll know what I knew. I left the suitcase in the middle of the living room. No note. No label. Just there, sitting like a quiet question waiting to be answered. And then, like a man who finally accepted he was the punchline of someone else's private joke, I left the apartment. Took the train 3 towns over to a motel that smelled like cleaning spray and broken dreams. Rented a room for a week under the name Clyde Butterman, a name I made up on the spot because it sounded like someone who wouldn't ask questions or cry at night. The clerk didn't even blink, just handed me the key and grunted something about the vending machine being out of order. I sat on the edge of the creaky motel bed and stared at the wall until sunrise bled through the dusty curtains. And still no message from her. No check-in. No miss you. No digital breadcrumb to suggest she even noticed I'd gone missing. That's when the rage came. Not hot, not explosive, but low and steady, like a pilot light waiting for gas. And I knew, in that exact moment, that I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. It's a strange thing, disappearing without physically leaving. That's what I'd done, erased myself from her world while still being only a 30-minute drive away. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and chose not to care. That possibility haunted me more than anything. That she might have opened the front door, seen the absence, and simply shrugged. I spent that entire 4th day inside the motel room with the curtains drawn, my back against the headboard, watching the ceiling fan spin like it was counting down something I hadn't figured out yet. I kept checking my phone, not for her, but for me, to see if I still existed. No calls. No messages. Just a couple of push notifications about deals I didn't want and memories I didn't ask to be reminded of. At one point, I pulled up her Instagram. She'd posted a picture. Her and Keaton, not together. Exactly. They were careful, but the background was the same. The reflection in the window gave it away. Same skyline. Same lighting. Same bottle of wine in 2 different hands. She captioned hers, resetting medium light skin tone emoji modifier. He captioned his, recharging wineglass sparkles. I wanted to scream. To smash something. But I didn't. Instead, I screenshot both. Cropped them. Labeled them. Numbered them. And then I created a Google Drive folder with a name she'd never think to click. Old Taxes 2018 to 2019. Inside, I built subfolders. One for photos. One for texts. One for receipts. One for voicemails, including the one she left me 2 months ago where she accidentally said, "baby," in a tone she'd never used with me. I isolated the audio. Amplified it. Labeled the clip, not my name. MP3. I wasn't going to blackmail her. I wasn't even going to confront her. But I wanted her to know, when the time came, that I hadn't just been broken. I'd been watching, recording, archiving. At exactly 6:23 p.m., I scheduled an email. One link. No subject line. No body text. Just that Google Drive URL, set to be delivered 3 days after her return. Why 3 days? Because I knew her. Day 1, she'd come home, realize everything was gone, and assume I'd lost it. That I was weak. That I'd run. Day 2, she'd spiral, digging through her contacts, asking mutual friends where I'd gone, trying to piece it together. And by day 3, just when she might start to feel something resembling guilt, that folder would land in her inbox like a thunderclap. A complete, undeniable record of who she'd been while she thought I was too stupid or spineless to see it. But there was one more thing I had to do before I disappeared for real. There was a man I needed to visit. Not Keaton. I wasn't going to touch him. That would be too obvious. No, this man was older. Quiet. Wore tortoiseshell glasses and worked in a nondescript office above a vape shop downtown. A notary. The kind of man who asked no questions when you handed him a sealed envelope and said, "Mail this only if you get a call from someone named Rhea Martin asking about a will." He nodded, took the envelope, filed it away, and just like that, a new piece was on the board. Because if she wanted to play games, she'd learn I wasn't just a pawn. I'd become the board itself. On the morning of her return, I didn't wait outside. I didn't hide in the bushes. I didn't drive by the apartment like some rejected movie villain. I went to a public library, of all places, and sat in the second-floor reading room beneath a skylight that poured fake peace over a very real storm building in my chest. I sat with a book open on my lap for hours, not turning a single page, just thinking about how she'd react when she opened the front door and found an echo. I imagined her calling my name, only for it to bounce off the bare walls and hit her right back in the throat. I imagined her stepping into the bedroom, finding the floor where the bed used to be, and that single suitcase in the middle of the room, filled not with clothes, but with guilt. But the part one kept coming back to, the part that played over and over like some sick lullaby, was her voice in my head, saying it again. "We'll talk when I get back." As if my silence had been the problem. As if I hadn't spent the last year slowly disappearing in plain sight, while she collected new versions of herself like passport stamps. Every new city, every new work trip, she came back lighter, brighter, and I came back a little less real. Like someone she used to know, but couldn't quite place. I checked my phone around noon. Nothing from her. No missed calls. No angry texts. No fake confusion. Just more silence. It was working, but part of me hated how much I still wanted her to care. That was the worst of it. Not the betrayal, not the lies, not even the laughter I'd heard in those voice notes she never meant for me to find. It was the fact that some broken, childlike part of me still hoped she'd crumble. That she'd walk into that hollowed-out apartment and realize she'd gambled everything and lost. But I knew Rhea, and I knew what she'd do. She'd go quiet. Not because she was processing, because she was calculating. So when the email finally hit her inbox, exactly at 3 p.m., I knew what came next wouldn't be noise. It would be fire. And I was right. At 3:11, she called me. I didn't pick up. At 3:12, she texted, "Toby, what the hell is this? Call me now." At 3:14, "Where are you? What is this?" At 3:18, "This isn't funny. You've taken this too far." Too far. She used that phrase like she still had any idea where the line was. By 3:25, I was watching her through a security camera I'd forgotten we still had access to, one she never remembered I'd installed in the hallway during the first break-in 3 years ago. She looked smaller, pale. She stood completely still in the living room, staring at the suitcase, holding her phone like it weighed 50 pounds. I wanted to feel something. Vindication, relief, triumph. But all I felt was distance. Like I was watching someone else's life, and mine had ended weeks ago. She finally dropped onto the floor, cross-legged, like a kid waiting for punishment that never came. And then, slowly, methodically, she opened the suitcase. She pulled each item out like it was a body part. The shirt, the photo, the flower. I could see her breathing shift. Then she reached the letter. I hadn't planned to write one. But the night before, something in me cracked open and spilled. It was 4 handwritten pages, folded neatly, addressed to the version of you that used to love me. I didn't accuse her. I didn't insult her. I just laid everything bare. All the things I noticed, all the ways I kept quiet, all the times I forgave her before she even asked. I ended it with one line. "You said we'd talk when you got back." So here's everything I would have said if you'd ever planned to listen. I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. The look on her face when she finished reading said everything. But it was the message she sent me 2 hours later that finally knocked the air out of my lungs. 7 words. No punctuation. No emojis. No rage. Just, I don't even know who you are. And the worst part? Neither did I anymore. That night, I dreamt I was walking through a house I'd never seen before. Every room had our furniture, but the walls were painted with arguments we never had, and every photo frame held a version of her that didn't look back. When I woke up, I was on the motel floor, my face pressed into the carpet, fingers clenched around my phone like I'd been bracing for impact in my sleep. The message was still there. I don't even know who you are. 7 words that haunted me more than the cheating, more than the lies, more than the stupid voice memos with Keaton and his smug little chuckles. Because those 7 words? They were honest. Maybe for the first time since I met her. She didn't know who I was. And the awful truth was, neither did I. I spent so long molding myself into something she could stand to come home to, softer, quieter, more accommodating, that by the time I realized I was vanishing, I'd already gone. My entire existence had been background noise in her highlight reel. Her safe harbor. Her plan B. Her emotional support appliance. But now I was something else. Something she hadn't planned for. I didn't reply. Instead, I transferred the last bit of savings from our joint account, the one she probably assumed I'd forgotten existed, into a private one. Left her $4.23. Just enough for a black coffee if she still liked it bitter, the way she claimed to when she wanted to sound low maintenance on first dates. Then I started making calls. Not the dramatic kind. Just quiet, administrative ones. I canceled our storage unit. I removed my name from the shared Spotify. I sent a digital request to disconnect the utilities. I even reported the Wi-Fi router as missing so they'd bill her for the replacement. Petty? Maybe. But every click felt like reclaiming a piece of me she'd casually pocketed on her way to someone else's bed. Around noon, I visited a friend, Liam, the only one I had left who wasn't really our friend, just mine. We hadn't talked in over a year. He looked surprised when I showed up on his porch with a duffel bag and a crooked smile. Jesus, he said, you look like a ghost. I feel like one, I said. He let me stay? Didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. We sat on his back porch with beers that tasted like dust and watched his neighbor's dog dig a hole for no reason. I told him pieces, not all of it. Just enough to explain why I'd disappeared and why I didn't want to be found. He didn't judge. He just handed me a second beer and said, sometimes the only way to win is to stop playing their game. I nodded. But deep down, I knew I hadn't stopped playing. Not yet. Because there was one last move I'd been saving. A reset button she didn't know existed. One that had been quietly humming in the background this whole time. See, 6 months ago, long before I found out about the affair, long before Keaton's dumb voice or Ria's vanishing acts, she asked me to help her set up a cloud backup. Said she kept forgetting her passwords. Said I was better with that stuff. So I created one account, one password, and I linked it to everything. Her phone, her laptop, her tablet, her entire digital life, synced through a back door she never thought to check. I hadn't touched it since. Not once. Until now. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about nuking her life. I didn't want to ruin her. That's what people don't get. It's not always about destruction. Sometimes it's about silence. About cutting the feed. Turning off the channel. So that night, while she was probably still scrolling through excuses, framing texts to friends, rebuilding the narrative in which she was the victim, I logged in quietly. And I wiped everything. Phone, laptop, cloud, calendar, contacts, notes, photos, gone. Not because I wanted to erase her, but because I didn't want her version of me to exist anymore. I wanted to vanish from her memory like she'd already vanished from mine. The screen went blank. And for the first time in months, so did the noise in my head. There's a strange calm that comes after you do something irreversible. Not relief. Not even closure. Just a kind of dead silence inside your head. Like you've walked through every door that ever mattered and locked each one behind you, knowing there's no going back. That's how I felt after I wiped her cloud. Not proud. Not vindicated. Just gone. I spent the next morning walking. No destination. No music in my ears, no distractions. Just the sound of gravel under my shoes and the occasional vibration in my pocket. Messages I refused to check. I already knew what they'd say. Anger, confusion, blame. Maybe even a fake apology thrown in like a lifeline I was never supposed to grab. At noon, I turned my phone off completely. It had become an anchor to a ship I'd already jumped from. Liam offered me his spare room indefinitely, said I could stay until I figured things out. But the idea of figuring things out felt laughable. What was there to figure out when the person you'd built your life around turned out to be a stranger, and worse, made you feel like one in your own skin? That evening, I sat on the floor of Liam's guest room with a box of my things, the few I'd salvaged before leaving the apartment. Old journals, backup drives, a broken wristwatch, 2 concert tickets from a night she said she was working late, but had actually flown to Austin to support a friend's art show. I found the boarding pass later, tucked inside a book of poetry she never finished reading. Funny how betrayal is never one big explosion. It's a series of soft, invisible cuts. Paper-thin lies that pile up until you're bleeding from places you didn't know could bleed. Inside the box, I found something I didn't remember packing, a USB stick. I plugged it into Liam's laptop out of habit more than curiosity. There were only 3 files. One was a photo of us on New Year's Eve 2 years ago, before the distance, before the cold detachment, before Keaton and Croatia, and we'll talk when I get back. We were smiling. She had her arms around me. I looked happy, genuinely happy, and I hated how much I wanted to go back there, even for a second. The second file was a voice memo. I hesitated before pressing play, and when I did, I almost stopped it. It was me. A recording I'd made in January, probably one of those late nights where I was too anxious to sleep and too scared to speak to anyone real. I was whispering. I think she's slipping away, but I don't know how to ask her to stay without sounding pathetic. I keep making myself smaller, hoping she'll miss the space I used to take up. I shut the laptop. Hard. I couldn't listen to myself like that. I sounded like a man mid-drowning, too proud to scream. The third file was titled, Break Glass in Case of Clarity. No idea when I'd made it. It was a document, just a list, really. A list of things I wanted to remember if I ever forgot who I was. Things like, you deserve answers that don't make you feel crazy. You are not responsible for someone else's double life. If they wanted to protect you, they wouldn't hide you. Leaving isn't losing. Her silence is not proof of your insignificance. It's proof of her inability to face what she broke. I read it 3 times. Then I did something that surprised even me. I opened a blank page, and I started writing something new. Not a message to her, not a letter of goodbye, but something I hadn't considered in weeks. A plan for a future without her. A small one. Simple. Not revenge. Not redemption. Just reconstruction. Because maybe, just maybe, the only way to win was to stop living inside a story she was still trying to rewrite. It's been 4 weeks. No explosions. No courtroom scenes. No viral texts. Just time. Real, slow time. The kind that doesn't heal everything but gives the bleeding a place to dry. Rhea stopped trying to contact me after the 3rd week. Her messages turned from anger to guilt to silence. That silence used to terrify me. I used to think silence meant rejection. Now I know it's just space. And space can be a gift if you stop trying to fill it with the wrong things. Liam helped me find a small apartment above a bookstore. It's not much. The floors creak and the heat rattles in the mornings, but I like it. I like that no one ever picked these walls but me. I painted one of them green. I don't know why. I just like the color. I never used to choose things like that on my own. I started cooking again. Not for someone else. Not to impress or to fix anything. Just because I missed the sound of a skillet in the morning. I even made pancakes last Sunday. Burned the first 2. Laughed anyway. I opened that same blank document from Liam's laptop and turned it into a journal. No grand narratives. No pity monologues. Just small things. What I saw on my walk. What I overheard at the market. A dream I had where I was dancing with someone whose face I never saw. And I wasn't nervous. Just happy. I haven't dated. I don't plan to. Not yet. I'm still figuring out how to be with myself in a room and not feel like I need to shrink. Still trying to unlearn the habit of flinching when someone says they need space. Like it's the first crack before the collapse. But I'm better. Not fixed. Just better. Sometimes I see her name in my inbox. Old threads, bill receipts, shared calendars we forgot to delete, and I feel nothing. Not anger. Not longing. Just a quiet recognition that this chapter closed itself before I ever had a chance to write the ending. And that's okay, because now I get to write something new. Something honest. Something mine. So no, we never talked when she got back. But maybe the truth is, that conversation was never meant to happen. Maybe it ended exactly how it needed to. With me, somewhere else entirely. Alive, quiet, and finally free.